There's another standby light, and the light is green. Hello, folks. My name is Walt, and when I'm not impersonating Mike Lafferty, I'm a part-time host of the band podcast, along with frequent co-host, educator extraordinaire, and a lover of comics, Jason Tondro. How are you, sir?
I'm great, thanks. It's good to be here.
Today we have luminaries in the comics industry. Longtime guest and fun fan favorite. A little alliteration there for the writer on the podcast. But we have Sean Izaakse. How are you, sir?
Good, man. Good. I'm awake and raring to go, man.
It's a lie.
Even though it's just after 1 o'clock in the morning, it's like this. I hit my second wind.
Oh my gosh, who does this to these artists? It's terrible.
You do.
And that would be our other guest, Mr. Jim Zub. How are you, sir?
I'm good. From what I've been told, I was on this podcast like 6 years ago.
It's true.
That's wild.
It's true. And we've been chasing you to get back on ever since. Although, with stardom and all of the glitz and glamour, I'm sure, is sparkling in your eyes. You probably just missed these small Twitter notices. It's fine.
Oh, shit. Yeah. Comic book stardom. Let me tell you about that. It's a deep and meaningful thing.
Tell me about comic book stardom. Like do people...
I'll let you know if I ever see it.
Excellent.
Jim Lee is a very nice person. How's that? That's good. Again, Jim's good people. There's comic book stardom for you.
That's comic book stardom for you, right? And yeah. And I remember when Image was breaking away, when those people were first breaking away from Marvel, when they were doing like jeans commercials and stuff.
Right.
And it was just amazing to me to think, holy crap! I mean, comic book personalities have finally hit mainstream, But
I think what's weird now is comic book culture is mainstream culture, and entertainment. Comic book based entertainment is absolutely rocking to the top of mainstream culture.
Yes.
But comic book creators are still, for the most part, except for Stan Lee and a few other people, we're pretty off the grid. Although it's weird though, because you get, when you work on one of these titles that people recognize now.
Yeah.
There's an assumption of, I don't know if fame's the right word for it, but like fame, I guess, or like they assume, that you get some part of movie, whatever.
Yes.
Which is just, of course, not the case, right?
Yeah.
So,
Can I? I'm curious about that a little bit, if you don't mind me talking about it a bit. What are the sales on your book?
Like Avengers?
Sure.
I mean, the funny part is I don't know yet because my first issue came out a month ago, so we won't get the sales numbers until later.
Okay.
So I don't even want to hazard a guess. It's a pretty big event thing they're doing right now with the Avengers. It's running weekly from the start of January through to the end of April. So we've got 16 issues in 16 weeks as part of this storyline called No Surrender.
Yeah. Well,
this is why Sean is not sleeping.
That's right. Well, what happened was Sean heroically jumped into the fore because we had 3 art teams put together. We've got Pepe Larraz, Paco Medina, and Kim Jacinto. And Kim had a health problem, and so we needed to get another artist in there just to make sure the book was going to be on time. And Sean heroically threw himself in front of that train and managed to stop it before it careened into disaster.
He makes it sound way cooler than it actually is.
Well, that issue is very cool. You drew the heck out of it.
It was really awesome, and I mean, like it has a lot of highlights. I was like, you draw like a bunch of issues, like a full issue, and about 40 to 50% of the book, most art, like I don't know if most artists like this, but you end up hating like 40% of what you've drawn.
Yeah.
Because you're like, oh, this page is great, except for those 2 panels that you just feel the crap. But with this book, it was down to maybe like 15% that I was like, I could have done better if I had more time. But
I think they should put that on the cover. That would be really good. This issue, only 15% crap, according to the artist.
Yeah, I suspect that for artists, that's actually a really great number. I mean, I think most artists are probably really critical of their own work.
Hey, man,
absolutely.
I got to draw Hawkeye in his classic costume. Like, I'm not going to complain at all.
Yeah. Yeah, right. But the reason why I ask about sales is, and just, I mean, pick another book that you've been doing recently. I mean, I'm just
sure. So I think Uncanny Avengers sells somewhere around 40,000-50,000 copies.
Right. Okay. So there's a good example.
Oh my God, I love Uncanny Avengers.
Yeah,
thank you.
I love that book as well. Yes, absolutely. And we live in a country of 350 million people.
Right.
Right. And so, and please don't get me wrong. I mean, I wrote a dissertation about superhero comic books. Like I am like, so I'm not here to undercut our form or anything, but we're really, and as far as the people that read comic books, we're really a tiny niche culture.
Right.
There's these amazing films that make $1 billion a piece.
Mm-hmm.
And like you say, they have this huge footprint on culture, but the number of people that actually pick up the comic books is so tiny. And I wonder what you guys think about that. Like, is it a good thing? Does it empower you? And feel
like a good thing that more people aren't buying comics?
Well, no, I mean, I don't know. I'm just curious. How do you feel about that? Like the fact that you work in a business which has such a tiny physical buy-in, and yet which has this huge cultural impact.
It's obviously strange. What's sort of amazing is that, the audience for comic books seems quite insatiable when people have access and when they open it up to more and more channels, whether that's digital, whether that's, foreign reprints and things like that. So I think that there's an audience there, but it's also about trying to convince an audience that this is, as a medium, is something that they should be tapping into for the source material, or really making it part and parcel of their fandom, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, one of the common perceptions about comics these days is that your books, and I know you certainly, I'm sure you don't believe that you're trying to make your own stories and do your own thing, but there's a point of view that superhero comics these days, especially a book like the Avengers, is kind of an R&D platform for future media spin-offs.
There's some people that believe that. Absolutely.
What do you think about that? Is that?
Well, I mean, it sounds a little weird because I'm actually doing it, right? So I don't talk to the movie people, if that's what you're wondering. They don't tell us what to write.
So you don't get to go up to the craft services table and like grab a sandwich?
No, I have never met any of the actors. I don't get invited onto the set. Like, that's not how that works.
I didn't think that was true. All I meant was do you see yourself as doing that? Like, you see yourself as trying to make a story that could possibly be in a movie one day? Or
I don't think that's the way to make good comics. Like, I see people do this all the time with indie books, where what they're really trying to do is they're trying to make a movie pitch.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes.
And it becomes so transparently, this is a weak movie pitch. Rather than this is a strong comic book. And so to me, it's like, if there's media interest in something, that's a bonus rather than the end goal, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
So getting into end goals and using the patented Banff blunt force segue. First, let me welcome Brendan Conway to the show, who made it through the technical issues with a tactical nuclear browser.
Awesome.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
Welcome, Brendan.
And Brendan has done amazing work with the Masks role-playing game that deals with a lot of teen superheroes, like you see in properties like Young Justice and Champions. But let's dive into Champions. I think one of the fun things that Wade did when the title started was I think he really developed a platform for giving representation to that segment of the population that really could make a real huge splash in comics, and that's that 16 to 20-year-old market. Because I mean, yeah, you got Harry Potter and he grew up to be whatever he's going to become now, but in comics, you look at most of the characters that are out there. You got people like Captain America, Hawkeye, even super popular like Batman, Superman. These people are portrayed in their mid to late 30s when you look at them, and there really was no huge heroes for the for that 16 to 20-year-old set to latch onto. And I think the ending page of the first issue of Champions was really telling, because it had social media playing such a big part in what the heroes were doing, and then showing that there was an audience for this going forward. Now, you guys are picking up, is it issue 21 somewhere
19, issue 19. So yeah, the April issue.
So
Sean is already underway drawing it.
Yeah.
So where do we see this?
Now, but I can't show anything. Sorry, guys.
Oh, I'm sorry, Sean. What was that?
I said I'm busy working on it at the moment, but I can't show you guys anything. Sorry.
It's all right. I'm sure we'll sign an NDA later. The camera's off. Go ahead, Sean. Show away. But where do we see the story picking up now, as we start getting some killer designs that hit Twitter the other night that we saw Sean putting up? Can you talk about where the story is going from here?
Sure. So, Mark and Umberto have done a wonderful job on the series, and the first 18 issues are really kind of their summation of the idea of what, the young generation of heroes at Marvel, how they see the world and how they want to not just be superheroes or be like their parents' superheroes, but really try and change the world in a way that's meaningful to them, that they're the people who are going to inherit this world and that they have a voice in it. And, people like Kamala Khan or Miles Morales, that they are heroes of this generation, and that their voice is something, a little bit different than their parents, in the sense that they are a little more kind of socially aware or politically aware than people were when they were teenagers before. And so we want to try and show some of that kind of activist voice, while also tapping into universal kind of teenage experiences, that you've got kids nowadays who are on social media, who are aware and being bombarded with politics and technology, but they're still also teenagers going through all those foibles of growing up and falling in love and figuring out who you want to be when you grow up. And I feel like that is, something universal that we can try and tap into. So it's this idea of, okay, the bigger, broader world, and trying to think globally, but that doesn't change that it's still a story about characters, and it's a story about kind of the universal coming of age sort of experience. And that's kind of the way where I'm coming at it, trying to take some of my favorite bits of kind of teenage comics that I grew up with, whether that's like New Mutants or Generation X or Young Justice or things like that, while also trying to speak specifically to this time and this generation and what the kinds of struggles that they have to think about, whether that's environmental change or the way that technology is invading our lives, or, kind of political overreach, all this kind of stuff.
It's got a lot of the stuff that like my favorite comics growing up was like, Teen Titans and New Warriors and like those kind of things. Seeing those character relationships really kind of, solidified my interest in comics, because I could relate to those characters at that time. You kind of grew up with them.
And you were talking earlier about how you had to change your art style a little bit on this, because in Avengers, the titles that you're working on now, you were saying that the drawings are very technical. Can you talk a little bit about how the art process evolves into something like this to be more relatable to a different audience?
Well, I don't know how relatable it is, but like one of my favorite artists is Stuart Immonen, and if you look at his work, like every single book that he works on, he changes his style, like no matter what it is. Even if you compare when he worked on Ultimate Spider-Man to current Spider-Man, there's like a vast difference. And then Next Wave was also very, very different. And so like I like to change it depending on what I'm working on, just because so that I don't get bored creatively. I don't want to get into that rut.
Yeah.
So I kind of look at No Surrender. I kind of like the guys working on that are just like so ridiculously good. So I kind of wanted to make my style very similar, so that when you get like the trade, it's not super jarring where you see something completely different. But now for Champions, I'm kind of doing less rendering I'm not over rendering and not, cross hatching everything and stuff like that, because I want it to be a cleaner, more like pure kind of look. So like the character designs that I posted the other day are very, very much similar to what I want to do. So it's like more economy of lines, and so that they can be brighter, if that makes sense.
Absolutely.
Well, and I think what's interesting is going to be seeing how, you're just getting into it now. So it's going to take a little bit of time to sort of get a feel for where you see the characters or how they're going to grow more comfortable with your style. You know what I mean?
Yeah, dude, like this page today, like I got up and I couldn't, I really, because I wanted to try something different. It's trying to almost, for me, it's trying to rewire my brain a little bit. So like it literally took me, I woke up at like 9, and I think I struggled just drawing this page until I ended up having to like have a recharge nap, because I was struggling with it. I wanted to smash something. I'm like, I even tweeted about it earlier. I said, like, I'm at that stage where I forgot how to draw now, because you want to try something different, but you're not used to it, and you start defaulting to the way you normally draw.
Sure.
So
and you're a new project's always going to be stressful that way, trying to find the right fit.
Yeah, exactly. So I was just getting very frustrated. So eventually I was like, screw this, I'm making dinner and then I'm having a nap. And then after that nap, I got up and I just automatically started drawing. It was like almost like a rewiring that happened. But yeah, it'll take me like a page, or it could take me like up to like 2-3 issues to really get comfortable with characters and figure out like, oh, this is how I draw them, this is how I draw this one. But strangely, most of my projects, it's like as I start getting used to the characters, it's finished.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully that's not going to be the case here. I want to hunker down for a solid run.
Yeah, I'm very, like, everybody seems super excited about these characters. I love the fact that like Champions is like the most diverse team at Marvel at the moment, and I think it resonates a lot with people. I had a really cool Twitter conversation the other day where I drew Sam Alexander Nova. I drew him, and he looked Asian, right? And these people, I was on this thread where like a bunch of fans were busy talking about him, and I out of curiosity, I don't think anyone realized that I was attached to this email thing, because you look and you're like, oh, and 7 other people, but you never look at who the 7 other people are.
Sure.
Right.
You just kind of reply. So I followed it down, and I looked and I was like, okay, cool, let's see what these guys are saying. And I expected them to be like those other fans that are like, oh, this guy should get fired, and he just doesn't know what he's doing, and very, very toxic and stuff. But they were awesome. They were having a conversation, and like you could see some people were like, oh, like I kind of want to give this book a try, but like he looks Asian, and that's very worrying because he's like half Latino, and this and this. So I was like, okay, cool. Like these guys are having like a very civil discourse and discussing it rationally, and you can see that they're passionate, but they are hesitant. So it took me about in all it took me about 3 minutes to open the picture where he's at, fix him a little bit, and I posted it to that conversation.
Nice.
And everybody was shocked. They were like, "Oh my god, thank you so much for fixing it, and it looks amazing." And I'm like, "Oh, that's cool, no problem." Like, I'm glad that you guys had you guys were nice to each other. That's the kind of thing we want,
Yeah.
And so they were like, no, we want we like representation means a lot to them, and I'm like, I agree. And I think like I got a lot of people that weren't sure about the title to be like, they messaged me and they were like, I'm adding this to my pool box. I'm adding this to my core order like right now because you were so cool and you listened to what the fans needed. And so I also said to them, I said, like, listen, I feel like I was very lucky growing up because comics helped me get through a lot of things. And I had like a lot of characters to choose from. I mean, I'm a white, straight dude. I had like a gazillion characters to choose from that I could relate to.
Yeah.
And I feel like everybody should have characters that they can see themselves as, not just people like me. I mean, everybody needs to be represented and be able to open a comic book and be like, wow, I see myself in this dude.
Yeah, yeah.
And so I told that to them, and they were like, oh, that is really cool of you. And it's like, no, man, everybody needs their own hero. Like, why not? So if I could just do one little thing to make someone feel a bit more included, why not? And I think that's
Jason.
I think that's the appeal of champions, man. I think that's the appeal of champions, because there's just these characters mean a lot to them. Like Dick Grayson was super important to me growing up. You know? And I feel like these characters can be that for other people.
Jason, Brendan, did you guys have questions that you wanted to ask?
Well, I was struck when Jim was talking about this idea of the character, these young heroes sort of trying to figure out who they want to be, and this very much reminded me of Brendan's game. Now you can correct me on Brendan on the exact phrase, but as I recall, that's sort of the central struggle for characters in Masks, is trying to figure out the person that they're going to grow into.
Yep, their whole image of themselves is changing over time, especially as they push back against the adult superheroes who have different ideas of what they should be, and as they sort of self-determine.
Yeah, and that seems to me for all of you guys to be kind of a central question. How much of what you are going to be is self-determined, and how much of it is trying to get imposed upon you by outside forces, even if it's something as simple as we've always done it this way, so this is the way you're going to do it now, or authority figures. I've been a college professor for years, and my students are right that age, they're right at that kind of 19, 20-year-old age. And what I see in my classrooms, especially when we talk about, Jim, some of the things you were talking about with the idea of kind of wanting to change the world and stuff, is that a lot of my students feel really disengaged from those issues.
Absolutely. So I teach also at a college. So I'm teaching here in Toronto at Seneca College in their animation program. And one of the things I found really valuable is being able to have that constant input from people at that age to get a sense of, and remind myself of what my priorities were, or those kinds of fears that I had at that age, really tapping back into that and kind of reminding myself, okay, what was I afraid of? Right. Oh yeah, that does seem really overwhelming. Yeah. Oh crap. This is really, you don't know where you're going to be, when you graduate. You don't know what the world has in store for you. So those anxieties are just right at the forefront in a way that I get that feeling now sometimes, but definitely not as consistently.
But at the same
particularly in a world where we're so connected, so much more to all of it.
You're right. There are those anxieties amongst our students, but they also are very good at building a wall that doesn't let people see those anxieties.
Right.
There's a kind of jaded attitude, whether it's accurate or not. I don't want to assume, but there's that sort of well, nothing can bother me, and I'm just kind of doing my thing. And I'm curious, how you want to try to present that or not present that in the book.
I think one of the most important things is to realize I've found interacting with a lot of these students that although they may put up a front for this, they really desperately want to have genuine experiences. They want to have genuine.
I absolutely agree.
One of the most powerful things that I can do in the classroom is actually show a bit of, not to go overboard, but there's a fine line of genuine emotion, or genuine kind of let down some of those defenses of myself and say, hey, I am afraid of these things, or I have had these difficulties, and sort of break kind of that expectation of I'm perfect and I'm the teacher and I'm going to tell you what to do, and you're the student and you're going to dutifully do what I say. That if we have a real conversation about real priorities or real emotions and real thoughts, it's a bit disarming, I think, at first, but then all of a sudden, if we can break through, we start to talk about much more important things and engage much more directly with what their real priorities are and what their potential is on that front. And so when we're able to do that, I find we get a heck of a lot more progress, and in the long run, I get a lot more respect, even though there's, that fear that I'm putting myself out there and maybe I'll embarrass myself. Better that than to just disengage and sort of pretend everything's business as usual.
Yeah, it's okay to be passionate about this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And to ignite their passion for the things that they care about. Because I'm teaching in an animation program, a lot of them are coming into this and they've been told, whether their fears about their own art or their fears about their careers or creative stuff where you're putting yourself on the line all the time with your art. I think there's that natural sense of fear about it. And so when you say to them, hey, it's okay to be passionate about this stuff, it's okay to be afraid, it's okay to be upset if it doesn't go the way you want it to, but now we're going to get past that and keep working. Like, screwing up is okay, being upset at times is okay, but at the end of the day, we also have to continue to make progress. And the only way to do that is to keep pushing at this and to keep building your skills. The only thing that I don't want you to do is run away. Like, don't run away from your problem. Don't run away from your weaknesses. Let's kind of confront this stuff head on and improve ourselves every step of the way.
Kind of like when Sean jumped down, grabbed a sandwich and a nap, and then came back at it.
That's right. That's right. As long as you don't give up, as long as you're continuing to do the best you can with it, and I try and explain to this. Yeah. When I can tell them, when you tell them an anecdote that, about your own experiences in the industry or your own experiences in school or whatnot, and, kind of taking that idea of, I was not a perfect student. I did not hit every mark along the way, but I didn't stop and I keep, plugging away at it and trying to always be willing to learn and be willing to put yourself out there. That's really half the battle with it.
And if you had quit, we would never have gotten the bald guy and the dwarf.
That's right. Well, all those things. That's even when I talk to people on Twitter, they talk to me about, I had someone tweeting at me last week and they were saying that they haven't finished their comic and they're turning 22 and they don't know what they're going to do because they're running out of time. And I was just like, oh my God. Like, I literally made my first comic when I was 25 and then it didn't get done till I was 26. And I didn't get paid to do comics till probably 6 years later. It's a long process. It's the classic 10-year overnight success where you've been plugging away quietly on your own thing. And then suddenly you have a breakout and everyone goes, where were you? And you're just like, I've been here the whole time. I've been working on this stuff for a long time. And no one noticed because it hadn't hit that point. You were still trying to figure out how to do it at a professional level, or you were looking for visibility or whatever that alchemy is. That thing they say about, being in the right place at the right time. Well, the only way to do that is to have places and times, and as many of them as humanly possible, so that one of them is going to be the right one.
Yeah.
Now, seeing as you guys are becoming extremely visible with titles like Avengers and Champions, do you have people coming back and saying, like for Sean, that, hey, can you sign my copy of Stray? I saw you on Avengers and I picked up your back catalog, or for you, Jim, where they said, hey, I saw you on this, or I saw you on Avengers or Champions, and I decided to pick up your entire volume of Skull Kickers. I mean, do you guys get stuff like that happening?
Sean?
It's strange, really, because like I used to. It's weird because I used to go to the comic shop by my place and they used to be like, okay, cool, come do a signing. So I'd sit there with copies of Stray and Pathfinder, and I'd maybe sell like 1 or 2 copies, maybe, and then as soon as I had like a Marvel book out, then there was like the queue out the door kind of thing, and I'm like, but hey guys, if you like this, check this out. And a lot of times people are like, no, like, cool, they just want the Marvel stuff. But last year there's a convention in Cape Town as well called FanCon, and I went there, and it was strange. Like, everybody was divided. You had like the guys that just came for Marvel stuff, and then you had the Stray supporters. They came and they just wanted to buy all my Stray stuff. They didn't care about the Marvel stuff. So it's kind of weird because you got those guys because they don't want like the mainstream stuff. So they purposely come for whatever other thing you've done. And then every now and again, you can kind of sell the guys that are buying your Marvel stuff with one of your other books. But generally, I find that they're very separate camps kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I don't know how it is with Jim and that, but that's sort of what's happened to me so far.
Yeah, it's a bit of a mixture. Definitely the same. I mean, the good news is that, rising tide and all ships and all that kind of stuff. Like the visibility of the name means that it's going to be easier for you to sell your own stuff. But obviously, there's a lot of people who are just there for the characters. Like they're there because they've always read the Avengers, or they know the movies, or they currently collect Marvel stuff. And so whoever was the writer would get their interest for a signature, and that's fine. Like I have no problem with that, but what I'm hoping is that over time they start following the books I'm doing. When someone tells me that they moved over from Thunderbolts, which was my first Marvel monthly superhero book, over to Uncanny Avengers, and then from Uncanny Avengers to Avengers, and then from Avengers over to Champions, like they are liking the way that I tell Marvel stories, or the way that Sean and I work together, or whatever it might be. If that is the case, then slowly but surely, hopefully that, whatever you want to call it, stamp of quality is the kind of thing that I can slowly move them over to my creator-owned books and get them interested in reading other things that I've done. One of the reasons why I got the offer to do Champions is because I do an Image book called Wayward, and Wayward is all about kind of teenage struggle and stuff like that, and characters with supernatural powers. It's a darker book. It's a kind of a more complicated story, and it's most of it's based in Japan in real locations. So there's a whole other side to that, in historical stuff and mythology and whatever. But that idea of, I'm channeling teen angst and drama and everything of that age, there's a clear kind of crossover. If you like Champions, I do think you'd like Wayward, and vice versa.
Yeah.
So, it's just a matter of finding those bridges to bring people over.
Right on. My wife got Wayward #1 just to see what all the cats on the cover were about.
Right. We definitely have feline fans who let that cover. I told Steven when he put that cover together, I'm like, that cover is sold probably a few thousand trade paperbacks by itself, because it's so evocative and it's atmospheric and it really engages you. A good cover is worth its weight in gold, because it can really, really jump off the stands. And I feel like I've been so fortunate that all the Image stuff that I've done, we've had really, really great cover art that just grabs you and doesn't let you go.
Also, like, don't underestimate having a cat on the cover art. I was at New York Comic Con. That's when I first met Jim. Was at in 2014 at New York Comic Con, and I was promoting Stray. And there was a dude next to me that was drawing. He draws hero cats.
Wow, nice.
And dude, like, you won't believe it, right? So there was Stray had blank covers, sketch covers, and hero cats had sketch covers, right? I sold that whole weekend. I sold, I think, 3 Stray sketch covers with sketches on them. The dude next to me that did hero cats, he sold like 150 sketch covers that weekend. Right? And you know why? Because people were asking him to draw their cats on the cover, and they were buying it like mad. They were like, here's a picture of my cat. I'll pick it up in like 20 minutes. And he sold 150 of these things. I was so jealous. I was like, why didn't you
early on in Wayward, we told fans to send photos of their cats in with their fan letters. And we had a surge of fan letters of just people sending photos of their cats lying on top of the comic or in their lap while they were reading the comic. Like, it's, you tell them you want to see their pets, they come out in droves.
They do. Yeah.
Jason doesn't know anything about that.
I don't know anything about that.
Dude, don't even joke. Okay? Like, right at the end of the convention, I asked the guy, I'm like, listen, can you do a sketch cover for me, but put my dog on the cover? And I'm a big Captain America fan, so we literally drew a picture of my dog as Captain America. we were giving him a lift to the airport, and he drew it in the car on the way to the airport.
Wow.
Yeah, and it came out so good. Hey, I was like, oh, this is so cute. Yeah.
People love their pets.
They do.
Good stuff.
Yeah. You know what? Hey, people that don't like animals, I don't trust them. I'm just saying.
It's true, and then of course you can get an animal that's a good judge of character, pop all in one.
Nice.
So I mean, um,
my two are both sleeping on the couch here behind me.
oh, I remember what sleeping dogs are like. Yeah, I haven't experienced that with this one yet. I just had a weird fan question to ask Sean. What's it like drawing Dude Hulk? Because I love Dude Hulk. He's so much fun. Amadeus Cho.
Yeah. I've only dreamed on that first picture that I posted on Twitter, and Hulk. All Hulks for me are very weird to draw. Mostly because you have to throw all your knowledge of anatomy. Like,
yeah, I was gonna say it's gotta be the anatomy, because the anatomy is all wrong.
Like I'll literally sit and draw him as big as I think I can. That's reasonable. So I will draw it as if like, okay, like he should.
That's your first mistake, drawing him reasonable.
No, that's the thing. That's the rough stage. I draw him reasonable, and then I add more muscle, and I add more muscle, and I add more muscle, and then I'm like, and then when it gets to the point where I'm like, like this is just looking really bad, then I'm like, okay, if I add about 10% more, then I think. You know, so like he was a tough one. I even said to some friends, I'm like, guys, I don't know if I can draw this guy big enough. And then he came out pretty all right. But now, like, I've got to see how it is when I start drawing him in action, and if I can like maintain him looking that cool, because like the musculature is just so big. But I kind of want to draw him doing like weird stuff that you would never see Hulk doing. You know,
like in a Starbucks.
You know, like on a surfboard or whatever. You know. Like, I think Jim should draw him wrestling a shark at some point. I don't know.
I gotta write these all down. Is that what you're saying?
I think that I'm just throwing ideas in the wind, Dave.
It could be like that Batman 66 King of the Beach episode with the Joker, where they have like the surf contest.
Nice.
Yeah.
There you go.
That's good stuff.
So maybe
you must ask Jim. Dude. I'll message Jim and I'll like be like, dude, get on the phone now. I want to geek out to you about something. And then I'll sit and talk. I'll rant at him for like 20 minutes because of something that I thought was really cool.
And has any of those rants ended up in the comic yet?
Not yet. I mean, Champions, we're just getting rolling with. That's the interesting part, is that our first issue doesn't come out till April. So we've just been doing story development. And I finished the first script, and I'm basically plugging away on my second issue, which won't be out until May. So.
Right on. So if you can give us a quick blurb, like if for folks who've never read Champions before, and if you haven't, and you got something like Marvel Unlimited, definitely go check it out, because you got a whole bunch of issues on there. If not, jump over to any of the local e-tailers, retailers, and definitely pick it up, because it's a fun read. But as far as you and Sean, can you give us a quick hint as to what we can expect to see, especially with some of the new characters coming in, like Nadia and Riri?
Sure. So, I mean, at its core, Champions is still what it was, you know, in the previous iteration with Mark Waid and Humberto Ramos, and that is, it's the young heroes of Marvel sort of struggling to find their place in the world and make real, lasting changes in the world. Be you know, the heroes that they are trying to be, and trying to not just beat up bad guys, but actually affect lasting change in society, or open up, you know, new avenues for heroes all over the world. And that they're not trying to limit membership. They want to, anyone who wants to make the world a better place can be a champion. And that the best way for us to affect that change is to unify and work together to do so. So within that idealistic kind of auspice, there's all the, underneath that umbrella is all the teen drama of trying to figure out who you are, trying to be cool and awesome, falling in love, screwing up, finding your confidence, losing it, and getting it back again, all that kind of stuff. So it's the classic kind of teen coming of age story with superheroes and kind of this idealistic core of kind of progressive values.
You know, that proactive nature of your team, it reminds me a little bit, and I'm going in the Wayback Machine a little bit, of The Authority. Do you remember The Authority?
Yeah, you know, it's funny because we were talking early on in the brainstorming process with my editors, and, you know, you always throw out the biggest, craziest ideas first.
Yeah.
And so one of the things we say is, okay, so what if they did permanently change the world in a huge, crazy ludicrous way. And of course, the first thing everyone says is, well, the Authority. And the Authority is a huge, amazing series, very influential, obviously. And what's amazing about it, and it did generate a lot of good discussion between myself and the editorial, is, you know, making lasting change that doesn't come sort of from the people on the ground. That's difficult in its own right. You know, the reason why the Authority struggled so much is because they said, okay, we're going to get rid of poverty in this region, but they did it in this, you know, fascist kind of authoritative way. And it says, well, good news, you fed a bunch of people, but they also, the minute you're gone, the fighting will continue. Or, you know what I mean? That these problems, they have to have a grassroots component to them as well. You can't just pluck people out of a bad situation and hope that it's going to never happen again. You know what I mean?
This is a recurring theme in a lot of superhero comics that try to do this, right? I mean, I'm thinking of everything from the famous Squadron Supreme limited series to Christopher Reeve's Quest for Peace, you know?
Absolutely.
Where you can, Superman can come along and grab and that movie is awful, let's just be honest, and I love it. you can grab every nuclear missile on Earth and throw it into the sun. But if no one agrees with you doing that, it's not going to actually solve your problem.
Right. Yeah. Well, and the idea as well that you know, again, it's people need to believe and want to make these changes, not be forced to make them. And that's one of those difficult things that you can, you know, you're trying to drag society to a better place. Something like gay marriage, right? If you just tell people, you have to do this, they may not understand. But if you can create empathy in someone else and say, look, if you've ever been in love, if you love someone else and you weren't allowed to be with them, wouldn't that be terrible? If you can bring them on side and make them understand, even if it seems obvious to you, then you're not just getting the change you want, you're actually building allies in a phenomenal way. And you can see that when you look at the acceptance of something like gay marriage in America, where all of a sudden it broke through that barrier where people were like, I don't see do whatever you want, just don't show me, don't show me. Oh wait, no, it doesn't matter anymore. People are on side. It's not, the issue is now, you know, are you on the right side of history and stuff like that. And so it's kind of, it's that weird thing where you want to try and tell a story that is meaningful without being preachy, that has ideals without, you know, just yelling stuff from a pulpit. Like, how can we make a book that exemplifies these values and is aspirational without seeming like we're constantly wagging our finger at the audience and telling them who they are or how they should act?
Yeah, this is the kind of tightrope that every Captain America writer and artist.
Sure, because you want to be aspirational and you want to be current and you want to be relevant, but at the end of the day, it can't just, people are buying these books for adventure and they're buying it for drama and they're buying it for action. They're not just buying it to receive a lecture that tells them good and bad behavior in that very you know, preachy sense, I guess.
Yeah.
Now, one of the fun things that I really enjoyed about Skull Kickers back in the day was your inclusion of game stats in some of the back of the.
Yes. Yeah, I was going to ask about this. So first of all, I feel like I've been bad about tell us about the Masks RPG stuff, because we've been rambling for ages about. So tell us about the system. Tell us about how characters are generated. I love RPGs so much, so I want you to tell me more about how that all works.
Just to be clear, I've been loving just listening to you talk. So this has been great for me.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, so Masks is a tabletop RPG. It is styled after the Powered by the Apocalypse system, which is a particular like family of games, mostly involving 2 6-sided dice. But the core of it is your characters have these stats, which are their labels, how they see themselves. And those go up as they see themselves more as that thing, and down as they see themselves less as that thing. So, like,
are they educating that, or is the game master educating that?
The GM is often, because what will happen is Superman shows up, and Superman will say, like, "You did a real bad job saving the city that time, because that building and that building and that building aren't there anymore, and they should be." and
Right.
you done screwed up.
Nice.
And that will shift down that character's savior, for instance, and it might shift up that character's mundane, making them feel like a regular person, unless they choose in that moment to say, you know what, I don't care what you think, Superman. You weren't here. You weren't here. So why are you telling me this? And the objective is to try to have this push-pull of who you are is affected by external sources, but at certain points you're going to feel like you want to seize control of that away from Superman, away from these authority figures.
Right.
And one of the things I was interested in asking you was this thing where in Masks, the adult NPCs always have this ability, this influence over you by default. And so we tend to use them both as sort of supportive elements. They're positive, they'll build you up, but also they're often baseball bats. And I'm going to thwack you into a shape because I'm sort of trying to push you.
Right.
And it works in the game. It gives you something to react to. But for you writing champions, do you see how do you see the pillar characters, the adults? Do you see them in both of these modes, or like one dominant over the other? Or
I think it's really important, like you sort of said, that there's multiple ways to use them, and that you don't just want to be one note with them. The last thing I want to do is I don't want to have the adults be always right or always wrong, because I think that speaks overly simplistically about the way real life works and the moral quandaries of these difficulties, right? In the first storyline we're doing, it's like a 3-part story, and some of these adult superheroes end up getting involved, and the champions have a disagreement with them based on broader things that are happening in this story. And so this idea of the champions have a different piece of information than the adults. The adults have more experience, and how does that sort of come together in this disagreement? And that disagreement doesn't necessarily mean, and now we have to kick the crap out of each other necessarily,
Right.
But it could. And that's the thing, is that you want to be able to, you want the conflict to be interesting. And sometimes those disagreements are based on, hey, we're adults and we actually know stuff that you don't know. And other times it's, hey, we're adults and we are out of touch with something very current because we have not been in that situation, or haven't been in that situation in so long that we've sort of lost that empathy, and trying to, again, find the two different sort of threads of that and make it so it doesn't feel like we're overdoing it in one or the other.
No one's always right and no one's always wrong.
Yeah, because I think that's that kind of pedantic, kind of overly simplistic worldview. If I just said, well, adults are always dumb because this is the champions book, you're like, well, that doesn't work. You know what I mean?
Well, it would just be boring. It would just
and you'd just be like, why? It'd just be these straw man kind of arguments of, well, they can't be right because their name's not on the cover. And you're like, no, I think that the way that you test characters and the way you make characters interesting is by putting them up against difficulties. And those difficulties can include being wrong, making mistakes, having to accept that they don't know everything. And other times, struggling to prove that they're right, struggling to understand something more about the world around them,
I just want to say, Brendan, I just really love your game. I was only introduced to it about a month ago. I do some game kind of development and design of my own, sort of freelancing, and I had an itch to start working on a kind of Harry Potter magic school kind of game, and I went looking for systems. And when I asked my Facebook cloud to make some recommendations, they pointed me to Masks as possible inspiration, and I picked up the PDF copy, and I just really love the simplicity of the game and the way that it deals with these real kind of important issues about growing up and figuring out your identity. And it seemed really fresh and original. And I just really love what you did with the Apocalypse system.
Thank you so much.
So please just keep doing what you're doing, because it's a great game. I was wondering if you could talk a little about the development of the game, though. Like, did it change a lot in its behind the scenes development before it popped out into the world?
Oh yeah, I was working on that guy for several years before it arrived at its final form. I mean, it started with just this super simplistic, dumb thing where a friend posted a picture, and I think it was the cover of one of the X-Men series at the time, and it had X-23 kissing young Cyclops. And they were just like, I want a game that does this. And I'm like, so do I.
Okay, right on.
Let's make that happen.
Okay.
And like at first it was taking another existing system and just contorting it to try to make it fit, and then it didn't.
Okay, now, what system was that? I'm going to make you drop that name.
Oh yeah, absolutely. That was Monster Hearts by Avery Alder, and Monster Hearts is very much like Vampire Diaries or Buffy. It's teen monsters in school, so it's got the melodrama and the angst, but from the direction of the horror more than superheroes, obviously. And so over time, my desire to also capture other things, I kept reaching for other things to pull in. I liked Young Justice. I wanted this to be able to do Young Justice. I liked Avengers Academy. I liked Young Avengers. That constant reach to try to make sure the game could do all of these things is what made me identify common elements to ensure the game could then actually perform those functions.
How long's it been out for?
It has been out now for 2 years.
Nice. Very cool. Have you guys just done the core book, or is there also supplements and stuff?
Yep, we did one supplement so far that's published, the Halcyon City Herald collection, where it's an in-fiction newspaper. We had a bunch of cool people write like fun articles from the in-fiction newspaper, and we got to talk about goofy things all over the setting. And we're doing 2 more supplements that are in the works right now. We're doing one all about Aegis, which is our version of S.H.I.E.L.D., and it's the secretive spy organization stuff and their files and working for them, what that would look like. And then one more that's just straight up multiversal madness, and you took Masks and played it as a cosmic road trip. And what if you took Masks and played it where the aliens had invaded the Earth and took over? And so on and so forth.
Nice. That's awesome. Cool, man. Well,
Nice.
that's doing well. That's wonderful.
Maybe we can hint to some editor somewhere to get something in the back of a book. I'm working for you, Brendan.
Appreciate it.
So with us rounding out the end of the hour and basically trying to squish everything we could off of talking about champions and me geeking out on Sean's love of dogs and sandwiches and naps. This drops in April, but do we have a specific date of when we could see it, or maybe more close, like beginning April, end April?
It looks like end of April. The schedule that we had with No Surrender has obviously made it more difficult for Sean, and now he's under the gun, trying to crank away on this first issue.
You know what it kind of reminds me of?
My life, man.
This 16 week. It reminds me of the death of Superman. When that you had 4 different Superman books, each coming out like 1 week at a time, and there was a different artistic team on each one, and it reminded me a little bit of that sort of scheduling nightmare.
Well, the thing is with No Surrender, we actually wrote the story last year. So because we knew we were going to have 3 different art teams working away on this week, when it was released weekly series, we started writing it February, like a year ago, February of last year. Nice. And our team of 3 writers, we had to have a script every 2 weeks getting turned in, getting approval. And we had, I think, 6 in the can before the first art team started.
Awesome.
But it feels weird because we finished writing it mid-October, and now we've just been doing proofing, and there's always 3 art teams delivering these crazy number of pages every week now as we've been finishing each issue and proofing it in the whole 10 yards.
Well, it must just be amazing to finally see all those pages.
Oh, it's epic. It feels so strange because in some cases you've written stuff 5-6 months ago, and now finally it's all coming to the fore, and you're just like, yeah, it's a wild ride. And also the books are being released every week. So there's this nice momentum where normally you release a comic and there's, the first few days or even the first week or so, there's good discussion. And then you've got that 3 weeks where people are kind of cooling their heels, waiting for the next chapter before they get excited again. And this week, it's like every week there's another hit. There's more momentum. It just feels really good.
Yeah, that's
I think that like it's personally, I like this model. So there's no tie-ins, and it's just one series that you get, and you can follow the story nice and tightly.
Yeah.
I think it's really really cool, and I think that's probably one of the reasons why it's selling out all the time.
Yeah, the nice thing about it is really that I think the momentum, the sheer number of characters, we've got this big epic story that's got a bunch of mysteries in the center of it. So you feel like if you want to be part of the current ongoing discussion, you kind of got to be reading it as it's coming out. And so there's just a bunch of different factors that tie into, hopefully we stick the landing. It feels so weird because obviously it's all done now and we're kind of locked in. It's like, great. I love hearing all these theories from people about what they think some of the mysteries are going to be or how they're going to pay off. And it's exciting. It's exciting to be in the midst of it. Our final issue comes out the week before Avengers Infinity War. So we also kind of get to ride some of the marketing of people's just general interest in the Avengers in the big lead up to the film. And yeah, it's a fun time right now.
When they got all you guys together to brainstorm this story, what was the objective? Like what was No Surrender for from an editorial standpoint?
Well, from an editorial standpoint, there was this desire to sort of collapse 3 or 4 different Avengers titles into one, larger story that would run weekly for 4 months. The 4 months at the start of January leading up to the release of the film, because we knew we'd have that. So it was, a concept without a story. They said, we want something big. We want something epic. We want something that will be worth telling weekly. Yep. And then it was a matter of sort of going back and saying, all right, how, what would we want to do with our characters, or what can we do in a big way that's going to impress and try, exemplify the qualities that we feel make the Avengers great. And so that idea of assembling a group of heroes fighting a threat that they couldn't have done on their own.
What's our Kree-Skrull War except squeezed down to 4 months instead of a year and a half?
Right. Well, and that's the thing, creating that momentum. So there's some stuff formatting wise that we do in the book that you would never do in a monthly book because you'd get pillared for it. Like we can set up a mystery and really tease it out in 4 issues. Yeah. If you could wait 4 months for the answer, it would drive you crazy. But in 1 month, that's not so bad.
Somebody would end up blowing the answer online anyway.
Right. Or, there's a thing where it looks like we've killed someone at the end of an issue. And instead of people being like, no way. Yeah, a week later, we show you how we pulled out of that cliffhanger. But for a week, there was doubt. But we probably wouldn't be able to hold that tension for a month, know?
Yeah, that sounds cool.
Yeah, so it's fun.
Yeah.
Well, gentlemen, if I don't escape soon, my wife is going to eat the burritos without me.
I understand.
And there's 2 things you don't mess with in my life: coffee and Mexican food. So, I can't thank Jim and Sean coming on enough. It's been an absolute treat, and I'd also like to thank Brendan for coming on and sharing a bit of Masks and how we can tie games and comics together like this, because I mean, at the end of the day, once you close the issue, whatever happens, happens. But I mean, you could always continue the story at the game table, and that kind of makes us the both hobbies, both comics and games, fun. So, and as always, thank you, Jason, for once again lending a little bit of credibility to the show.
It's an honor to meet all of you, all 3 of you guys. I just admire the crap out of you all. So,
thanks, I appreciate it.
It was a pleasure.
Thanks, man.
And on that note, Bamf, and we're out.